Diddy will go to prison for life, people. You don't know things that I knew about Diddy back in...
In a stunning return to the Hollywood spotlight, Wendy Williams dropped a chilling declaration: Diddy will spend life in prison. Is this the death knell for the so-called silencing mogul? Sean Diddy Combs appearing in federal court after nearly a decade of silence. Wendy Williams' testimony didn't just target the alleged mastermind Diddy, but also dragged a slew of once untouchable power players into the fray. Names that long sat at the pinnacle of the entertainment industry now find themselves under the glaring spotlight of justice as Williams begins to unravel what she calls Hollywood's unhealed wounds, okay?
He was arrested for assault with a deadly weapon and making terroristic threats.
No longer mere baseless rumors, Wendy's court appearance comes armed with documents, testimonies, and long-buried evidence enough to shatter the walls of lies piece by piece. So, what drove this woman once shunned by the industry to stand up and accuse? Is there an unseen hand backing her, helping her reclaim her spotlight? Or is Wendy herself an indispensable link in a larger plan to topple Diddy and reshape Hollywood's power game?
Wendy, you got fired from Hot 97 years ago because of Diddy.
On a tense May Day, as the trial of Sean Diddy Combs unfolded, the New York federal courtroom fell into a breathless silence when Wendy Williams stepped inside. Gone was the radiant glow of her former days. Her face bore the weariness of a soul long burdened, yet she stood resolute, unshaken. Perhaps because after nearly a decade of silence, Wendy Williams had endured too much. Now appearing in this courtroom, she was determined to expose the man she called the dark mogul of the music industry, Sean Diddy Combs. Under the piercing gazes of those present, Wendy Williams began, her voice low but brimming with resolve.
ISEF stayed silent for too long. ISEF endured late-night threatening calls, advertising contracts yanked without explanation, and warnings as sharp as a blade against my throat, all because I dared to speak Diddy Sep's name. But today, I have nothing left to lose.
The name Diddy has long been synonymous with power. A billionaire media mogul and top-tier music producer who shaped the careers of countless A-list artists. But behind that glittering facade, according to Wendy Williams' testimony, lies an organized system of abuse, an underworld where any voice daring to challenge it is ruthlessly silenced. Wendy recalled her early days breaking into radio when she was repeatedly warned for exposing the horrific truths behind the lavish parties Diddy hosted. These parties were described with haunting imagery of drips hanging overhead, flickering red candles casting shadows in the dark. Young women escorted into private rooms, all required to sign non-disclosure agreements before stepping foot inside. I spoke about those things on air, and within a week I lost a major advertising deal. It stunned me. A clear, brutal first strike of retaliation. She said through her testimony, a chilling picture emerges of psychological pressure, silent terror campaigns, and gradual isolation beyond the fear of having her career stripped away. Wendy also faced threatening calls and even attacks from a girl group once backed by Diddy, whom she believes were directed to intimidate her music mogul who sent his all-girl group to beat me in front of the radio station. It was perhaps the years of relentless psychological torment from the mogul that ultimately led to Wendy Williams' severe diagnosis, aphasia, and front-temporal dementia conditions that turned her life upside down. When I started talking about Diddy, she said, her voice steady, I wasn't trying to tear him down. I just wanted people to wake up from the early 2000s. I saw it. Diddy was protected, shielded. People warned me not to mention his name because it would scare off sponsors, but I thought it was a joke. Then I lost contracts and got fired from my radio job.
Who sent his all-girl group to beat my in front of the radio station.
It was perhaps the years of relentless psychological torment from the mogul that ultimately led to Wendy Williams' severe diagnosis, aphasia, and front-of-temporal dementia conditions that turned her life upside down. When I started talking about Diddy, she said, her voice steady. I wasn't trying to tear him down. I just wanted people to wake up from the early 2000s. I saw it. Diddy was protected, shielded. People warned me not to mention his name because it would scare off sponsors. But I thought it was a joke. Then I lost contracts and got fired from my radio job.
Love that you have, 6 kids, 3 babies' moms.
Yes, all taken care of. I met all of them in the same year, so I've known all of them the same amount of time, but we were...
As Wendy began recounting the threatening calls, a heavy silence fell over the courtroom. All eyes turned to Diddy before she could finish. Sean Combs. Lawyer shot up, voice sharp as ice. Objection, there's no concrete evidence those calls came from. Mr. Combs, who are they? What did they say? Does she have recordings on the defendant's bench? Diddy's hands tightened on his lap. He kept his head down, but his eyes darted, betraying unease. This was no stage, no music or spotlights to hide behind, only the law and cold accusations. His face, so familiar in the media with its confident smile, now seemed a cracking mask. Wendy nodded calmly, then signaled. A muffled recording played, its low, menacing voice echoing through the courtroom. A murmur rippled through the courtroom but was swiftly silenced by the judge's gavel. At that moment, Wendy held up yellowed pages worn by time, each marked with specific dates written in slanted handwriting. Every line of memory, an anonymous call. A contract inexplicably vanished. A sudden removal from television at the peak of her career. Diddy sighed, visibly tensed. His lawyer rose again, this time with sharper hostility. Your Honor, all she's presented are personal notes, no photographic evidence, no direct witnesses, and entirely capable of being fabricated to sway public opinion. Diddy remained silent, but his gaze darkened. Gone was the confidence of a seasoned producer, replaced by a look of doubt, whether aimed at Wendy or at those once thought to be backing him. No one could tell. Wendy, undeterred, pressed on, recounting the time she was attacked backstage by girl groups trained by Diddy himself. In her testimony, she revealed at least 2 incidents where she was ambushed by female artists after a show met with venomous words and blatant intimidation. One of them grabbed my arm and said, "You know the rules, Wendy, don't make yourself a pawn anymore," she recalled. Her voice catching. I looked into their eyes. I didn't see hatred. I saw fear. They said those things because someone made them. Diddy's lawyer leapt up again, this time with a mocking tone. We're hearing a story straight out of a novel. No photos, no videos, no verifiable evidence. She's crafting a narrative to mislead the public. But the prosecution swiftly countered, asserting that Wendy's testimony was just one piece of a larger puzzle, with other witnesses, still anonymous, beginning to come forward. Voices once silenced were now rising, shielded by the law in the dazzling yet treacherous world of entertainment. Wendy wasn't the only one to glimpse the invisible hand pulling the strings, but she was among the rare few who dared to stand up. That defiance made her a thorn in the side of a powerful machine. Every time she uttered on air, she inched closer to the edge of an abyss where her career, sanity, and safety were all at stake. Then in the hush courtroom, Wendy delivered a haunting line. I'm no longer afraid they'll silence me. The scariest thing is that they already did for 10 years. Wendy's testimony pressed on her presence in the courtroom, targeting not just Diddy, but also the powerful names in his alleged network of accomplices. Tyler Perry, Oprah Winfrey. At that moment, Wendy produced her book, The Wendy Williams Experience, published in 2004, a work filled with coded references and veiled warnings about Diddy, Jay-Z, and their lavish lifestyles. Once dismissed as mere gossip, the government now viewed it as undeniable evidence. Jurors exchanged glances. Some scribbled notes quickly, while others seemed skeptical, as if questioning whether words from 2 decades ago could truly carry enough weight to serve as proof. Undeterred, Wendy recounted her 2009 interview with Mark Curry, a former bad boy artist and author of Dancing with the Devil, who called Diddy a shadow that destroys people. She fully agreed, yet soon after that interview vanished from the radio station's archives as if it had never happened. She told the court that every time she named someone critical of the industry, be it super executives Gene Deals or figures like Jaguar Wright, she faced fierce backlash, threatening emails, warnings, even complaints to the Federal Communications Commission, FCC. They tried to stop me by any means possible, she said. One detail seized the courtroom's attention. An unwritten list known to everyone in the industry of names you couldn't mention. I tried breaking that rule a decade ago, and I paid dearly, Wendy said. She explained how segments on her show mentioning sensitive names were repeatedly flagged for review. Producers issued threats, and executives warned her to stop. They told me I'd ruin everything for them, the station and myself. I had to stop, she said. For me, this trial isn't the start. It's the end of a long cover-up. I've been sounding the alarm for 20 years. Finally, someone's listening. Looking around the courtroom, Wendy's voice shifted, sharper and more resolute. But is this just about Diddy? No. She locked eyes with the jury and declared, this is about an ecosystem protecting him, including names never before mentioned in a courtroom. Tyler Perry, Oprah Winfrey, Diddy's lawyer, immediately stood, demanding the judge strike those names from the record for lack of direct evidence, arguing that mentioning figures like Perry and Winfrey was a ploy to grab attention and distract the jury from the case's core. A heavy silence enveloped the courtroom. The prosecution pressed her to clarify, and Wendy responded clearly. Hollywood has a list, not one you can see or hold, but it exists. It's a list of people you don't mess with. Break that rule, and you disappear. Why was Wendy so certain? Because after a falling out with the Precious team, the film involving Perry and Oprah, her career in the industry collapsed. I went from being invited to premieres to being erased from guest lists. An executive bluntly told me, Oprah's people don't want you near him anymore. That was real power wielded to shield Diddy and others in his system. But did Wendy label Oprah a monster with the same motives as Diddy solely for this reason? No, there was a darker story. Wendy had once confided in Oprah about her past abuse, and Oprah promised never to exploit it yet. What followed stunned her. Her abuser appeared on Oprah's show while Wendy herself was blacklisted. It wasn't just betrayal. She said it was revenge. The courtroom air grew taut with every word Wendy spoke with unwavering confidence and meticulous preparation. She presented a dossier. The prosecution called a turning point in the case. It contained emails, non-disclosure, agreements, NDAs, and internal memos, all previously undisclosed. Wendy claimed these were provided by former industry insiders who left unable to stomach the distortion of truth and the silencing of women. The prosecution stressed that the documents were voluntarily submitted, not obtained through illegal means. Like hacking, Wendy began reading from a 2007 NDA, names redacted but laced with menacing language. The SNI was barred from disclosing any private gatherings, recordings, or interactions, with Sean Combs, his guests, or associates under threat of financial penalties and public retaliation. She slammed the paper on the table. Public retaliation. It runs that deep. Diddy's team immediately countered, arguing, and does our standard in entertainment, to protect privacy with nothing unusual or illegal. In the document, a lawyer insisted Miss Williams is twisting a routine document into a criminal conspiracy. The judge cut in, directing Diddy's counsel to focus on refuting specific evidence rather than making broad claims at the defendant's table. Diddy's lips twitched, straining to maintain composure, but his icy gaze fixed on Wendy as if gauging the impact of her testimony on his fate, backed by the law. Wendy stood unshaken by Diddy's team's intensity. She continued, "You think these were just celebrity parties? No, this was a system planned, funded, scheduled, and executed with precision." She revealed further evidence of payments to PR specialists, talent managers, and bloggers, all to control the narrative, alongside an email instructing journalists to avoid recent rumors and instead promote Diddy's charitable work. In tandem with Wendy, the prosecution showed the jury a photo. Did Diddy, Tyler Perry, and a prominent crisis PR expert smiling together at a 2019 gala, while women were paid to stay silent. Or if they refused, NDAs destroyed. Wendy then presented personal evidence, bolstering claims of Diddy's pattern of behavior. She disclosed being offered an NDA in exchange for a TV deal contingent on ceasing to mention Diddy-related issues. She refused and paid dearly, facing smear campaigns and lost career opportunities. Her testimony illuminated not only the personal toll of Diddy's system, but also reinforced allegations that he used power to coerce and intimidate those who spoke out with conviction. Wendy declared, "Silence bought with money has stripped away freedom, peace, and truth from so many. That system is crumbling now." Her closing, paired with concrete evidence, built a compelling case that Diddy leveraged power, money, and legal mechanisms like NDAs to conceal wrongdoing and maintain control. Call, you know, my family, you know what is the problem with me calling and talking to friends of mine. It's clear that for Wendy, stepping into the light wasn't just about reclaiming her reputation or clearing her name. The threats and attacks, she said, were merely the tip of a submerged iceberg. Beneath lay an underworld, where fame and compliance were traded like commodities. At the center of that world, Wendy declared unflinchingly in court, was Sean Diddy Combs, and she was determined to expose it. When asked about Diddy's infamous parties events, many in the industry saw as life-changing opportunities, Wendy let out a heavy sigh, then slowly turned the pages of her memory. "Those weren't just parties," she said, her gaze distant as if recalling a nightmare. "They were like rituals. There was an order, rules, and silence bought with non-disclosure agreements." And as Wendy recounted whispers she'd heard from assistant stylists and even timid young singers who approached her off-air, they described lavish penthouse gatherings, flickering red candles evoking sacrificial rites, escorts dressed like attendants, holding IV drips, what Wendy called a sign. The game wasn't just partying but controlling bodies and minds. There were private rooms, young girls led in one by one. All of them had to sign pledges not to speak, not to look back, not to question why. They were invited, Wendy said, I tried to bring it up on air. The result a week later, a sponsor pulled out 2 weeks later. I was suspended a month later. I no longer had a seat on my own show for Wendy. These ritual parties weren't just symbols of debauchery, but evidence of a covert power structure fueled by fear, manipulation, and silencing in that system. Young artists were pawns, dissenters were sacrificial lambs, and those like her who dared touch the darkness paid with their entire lives. No one dared speak, Wendy said, shaking her head. Because if you did, the cost wasn't just your career, it was your memory, your health, your voice, your entire being erased at the close of her testimony. Wendy broke into tears, not out of weakness, but from the weight of 2 decades of warnings ignored. You see Diddy on trial. She said, her voice calm yet resolute. But I see something much bigger. This isn't just about what he did. It's about who let him do it. Pointing to Diddy's defense table, she continued, "You're defending one man, but behind him stands a tower built on fear, and his power plays lavish parties and billion-dollar handshakes." Turning to the jury, she said, "And every time someone tried to speak out, that tower crushed them. Remember this." While Diddy's the one accused, others, Jay-Z, Perry, Oprah, record labels, managers, stayed silent for years. Some witnessed the abuse, firsthand, shook hands, took his money, and ensured anyone who asked questions was driven out of the industry. Wendy concluded with the commanding, authentic, unfiltered voice that made her a radio legend. 10 years ago, they called me crazy. Now I'm proven right. I'd rather be right in hell than silent in heaven. She locked eyes with Diddy, who maintained his composed facade throughout the trial. "You thought I'd back down. You thought your power was enough. But now you're facing the consequences, and the law will hold you accountable before stepping down." Wendy cast one final look at the courtroom. This trial isn't the end. It's the beginning of a day when everyone dares to stand up, and soon that entire tower will come crashing down. She walked out, leaving the courtroom steeped in silence and reflection. The trial pressed on. Diddy remained silent before the media. His lawyers steadfastly denied all allegations, dismissing Wendy's testimony as the final delirium of someone who had everything and lost herself. But beneath that legal veneer, everyone knew what was truly on trial. Not just one man, but an empire, a network of silence and a culture of complicity deeply embedded in the American entertainment industry, where fame could buy silence and money could bend the truth. Wendy Williams, once seen as a scandal monger, had now emerged as the first voice to shatter that complicity, whether she prevails or not. Whether Diddy is convicted or acquitted, the bell Wendy rang today has ushered in a new era, one where power no longer shields abusers, and the truth, however long buried, finally finds a way to speak the question. Now isn't just whether Diddy is guilty, it's this: can one woman armed with her pain and her truth bring down the towering wall of lies built by an entire empire?